This is Madam Reed. On this channel, we don't talk about love through rose-tinted glasses. We only look at the raw reality of human nature. The story of Holly and Scott sounds like a psychological battle titled, "You Are a Jealousy Freak." A third party hidden behind the guise of a childhood sweetheart. A boyfriend who habitually uses "you are overthinking it" to manipulate. And a clear-sighted observer standing in the hallway, witnessing all the truth. This isn't just infidelity. This is a live demonstration of gaslighting. Holly arrived at Scott's apartment door just in time to see the foundation of her 3-year relationship crack down the middle. She had come straight from a grueling 10-hour shift at the marketing firm, her feet throbbing in heels, carrying a bag of Scott's favorite Thai takeout. But the scene in the hallway made the bag slip from her fingers. Scott wasn't alone. He had just returned from a business dinner. Or so he had claimed via text an hour ago. Leaning against his doorframe, he looked relaxed, his tie loosened. But it was the woman draped over him that stopped Holly's heart. Amber, his childhood friend. The one he swore was like a sister. Amber was practically melting into him, her head resting on his shoulder, her hand toying with the buttons of his shirt. It wasn't the posture of a friend. It was the posture of a lover staking a claim. As Holly rounded the corner, Amber lifted her head. She didn't pull away. Instead, she locked eyes with Holly, offered a slow, challenge-filled smirk, and then deliberately rose on her tiptoes to plant a lingering kiss on Scott's cheek, dangerously close to his mouth. "Thanks for listening, S," she cooed, her voice pitched high and sugary. "You are the only one who gets me." Scott, sensing a presence, turned his head. His eyes widened when he saw Holly standing there, stone-faced. He instinctively took a half-step back, creating a sliver of space between him and Amber, but the damage was done. "Holly," Scott said, his voice taking on that defensive edge she had come to loathe lately. "You are early, am I?" Holly's voice was calm, a stark contrast to the fire spreading in her chest. "Or am I just interrupting?" Amber let out a breathless little laugh, tossing her hair back. "Oh, Holly, don't be like that. I was just having a moment. Scott's been my rock lately." She stepped forward, extending a hand as if to pat Holly's arm, patronizing and dismissive. "You know how it is. Or maybe you don't. We share a history you can't really compete with." Holly sidestepped the touch. "I am not competing, Amber. I am staring at my boyfriend letting another woman hang off him in a public hallway." "You are so dramatic," Scott sighed, running a hand through his hair. He unlocked the door, ushering them both inside as if moving the location would change the reality. "She was upset about work. I was comforting her." "God, Holly, why do you always have to make everything dirty? She's like my sister." "If that is how you treat your sister, Scott, then you need therapy." Holly shot back, walking past him into the living room. She needed to sit down. The adrenaline was making her knees shake, but she refused to show it. She had grown up in the foster system in Ohio. She learned early that showing weakness was the quickest way to get crushed. "You are being insecure," Scott said, following her, while Amber made herself comfortable on the sofa, kicking off her shoes as if she paid the rent. "It's unattractive, Holly, really." This was their pattern. He would cross a line, she would call him out, and he would twist reality until she felt like the crazy one. Gaslighting 101. But tonight, something inside Holly snapped. Maybe it was the exhaustion, or maybe it was the way Amber was currently scrolling through her phone, humming, completely unbothered by the chaos she caused. "It's not insecurity, Scott, it's self-respect," Holly said, placing the takeout on the counter. "But fine, let's enjoy dinner." She wasn't ready to blow it up just yet. She needed to be sure. She needed to see if there was anything left to salvage, or if she was just clinging to a corpse. The answer came 2 days later at a birthday gathering for one of Scott's college buddies. Holly had dressed to kill. A sleek black dress, red lips, armor in the form of fashion. She was trying. She truly loved Scott, or the man she thought he was. She wanted to believe they could work. But throughout the night, Scott was a ghost to her and a shadow to Amber. He fetched Amber's drinks. He laughed at her inside jokes. He ignored Holly standing right next to him. Then came the moment of no return. The group was gathered in the living area, music thumping. Amber, claiming she was so tipsy, stumbled. It was a calculated fall. She landed squarely in Scott's lap on the armchair. Instead of helping her up and moving her aside, Scott laughed, wrapping his arms around her waist to steady her. "Stop it. You are tickling me," Amber squealed, wriggling against him. "Say, Uncle." Scott teased, burying his face in her neck to tickle her. They collapsed together into a heap of giggles and tangled limbs, completely oblivious to the room falling silent. It was intimate. It was sexual. It was a public humiliation of the woman wearing his ring. Not an engagement ring, but a promise ring he'd given her last Christmas. Holly watched them from across the coffee table. She felt a strange sense of clarity wash over her. The pain was there, sharp and agonizing, but the confusion was gone. This wasn't a friendship. It was an affair in plain sight, masquerading as innocence. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Holly walked over to the ice bucket on the drinks table. She scooped up a large glass of ice water, the cubes clinking softly. She approached the armchair. Scott looked up, his face flushed with laughter, amber still draped across his chest. "Holly," he said, blinking splash. The water hit them both square in the face. The shock made them gasp, pulling apart instantly, sputtering and soaked. The room went deathly quiet. "What the hell, Holly?" Scott shouted, wiping water from his eyes. "Are you insane?" "No," Holly said, her voice steady and loud enough for everyone to hear. "I am just cooling you off. You two seemed overheated." She looked at Amber, whose mascara was running, looking like a drowned rat. "You can have him, Amber. I don't share. And frankly, I'm tired of being the third wheel in my own relationship." She turned to Scott, who was scrambling up, red-faced and furious. "We're done, Scott. Don't come to my place tonight. I'll have your things boxed up by the curb tomorrow." "You are making a scene," Scott hissed, grabbing her wrist. "You are embarrassing yourself." Holly ripped her arm away. "No, Scott. You embarrassed yourself the moment you chose to disrespect me in front of everyone we know. I'm just the one closing the curtains." She grabbed her coat and walked out into the cool New York night. Her heart was breaking, shattering into a million pieces with every step she took on the pavement. But her head was held high. She hailed a cab, gave her address, and then let out a long, shaky breath. The first thing she saw when she entered her quiet, empty apartment was Bean, her rescue cat. He was a scruffy orange tabby with one torn ear, sitting by the door waiting for her. He let out a soft meow and rubbed against her ankle. Holly slid to the floor, still in her expensive dress, and buried her face in the cat's fur. The tears finally came, hot and fast. But as she cried, she wasn't thinking about how to win Scott back. She was thinking about how to survive the fallout. Because she knew men like Scott, he wouldn't let her go quietly. He would try to spin this. But Holly was a survivor. She had pulled herself up from nothing to make it in this city. She wasn't going to let a man with boundary issues and a high school crush ruin her life. She wiped her eyes, looked at Bean, and whispered, "That's now, buddy, and we're going to be okay." Little did she know, the war had just begun. The next morning, Holly didn't wake up with regret. She woke up with a headache and a to-do list. The emotional hangover was real, but Holly treated it like any other obstacle in her career. Identify the problem, strategize, execute. Problem, Scott's strategy scorched the earth. She spent the morning packing his things, not neatly. She wasn't folding his shirts or pairing his socks. She swept his toiletries into garbage bags, his expensive gaming console. It went into a box with no padding, his collection of vintage vinyl records stacked haphazardly. If he wanted to treat her heart like trash, his belongings could get the same treatment. By noon, a small mountain of boxes sat on the sidewalk outside her brownstone. She texted him a photo. "Your stuff is outside. It looks like rain. I'd hurry, then." She blocked his number. But cutting ties with a man like Scott wasn't that simple. He was woven into her life, mutual friends, favorite spots, shared accounts, and he was persistent. When he couldn't reach her phone, he started blowing up her email. "Holly, please, let's talk. You are overreacting. Amber means nothing." Holly deleted them without reading past the first line. She had work to do. That evening was Amber's birthday party at a trendy rooftop bar in Chelsea. A week ago, Holly had RSVP'd, dreading it. Now, she saw an opportunity. Scott would be there, undoubtedly playing the victim, spinning a tale of his crazy ex-girlfriend to anyone who would listen. She wasn't going to let him control the narrative. Holly called Liam. Liam was the new intern at her firm. 24, bright-eyed, with a smile that could melt glaciers. He was smart, eager, and totally infatuated with Holly, though he tried to hide it. "Hey, Liam," she said, cradling her phone as she fed Bean. "Are you busy tonight? I need a favor and a date." She could practically hear him straighten up on the other end of the line. "For you, I am free." "What is the plan?" "Dress sharp," Holly said. "We're going to crash a party." Holly arrived at the rooftop bar, looking like $1 million she didn't have yet. She wore a jumpsuit that hugged her curves in all the right places, her hair in loose, effortless waves. Liam was on her arm, looking dapper in a suit that fit him surprisingly well. He was handsome in that fresh, unjaded way that made Scott look tired and worn by comparison. The moment they walked in, heads turned. The music was loud, the air thick with perfume and expensive cologne. Holly spotted Scott almost immediately. He was by the bar holding a drink, looking morose while Amber whispered something in his ear. Her hand on his chest, Scott saw her. He choked on his drink. Holly breezed past him, Liam's hand warm on the small of her back. She greeted friends, laughing, sparkling. She introduced Liam simply as my +1, letting people fill in the blanks. Scott cornered her near the restrooms 10 minutes later. He looked disheveled, his eyes bloodshot. "What are you doing here, Holly? And who is that?" He gestured aggressively toward Liam, who was chatting charmingly with one of Holly's colleagues. "I was invited," Holly said coolly, checking her makeup in the mirror. "And that is Liam. He's refreshing." "You are trying to make me jealous," Scott scoffed, though his voice wavered. "It is pathetic, bringing a child to a party." Holly turned to him, her expression pitying. "Liam is an adult, Scott, and unlike some people, he knows how to keep his hands to himself when he's in a committed situation." "Oh wait, I forgot. We aren't committed anymore." "You are throwing 3 years away because of a misunderstanding," Scott pleaded, reaching for her. "Amber is just a friend. You know how she is." "I do know how she is," Holly said, stepping back. "She is a pick-me girl who thrives on validation from unavailable men. And you are the man who feeds it to her. I am done starving so she can eat." She walked back to Liam, who handed her a fresh drink. "Everything okay?" he asked, his eyes concerned. "Never better," Holly smiled, clinking her glass against his. Let's dance. They stayed for an hour, just long enough to make a point. Holly laughed louder than usual, danced a little closer to Liam than necessary. She saw Scott watching them from the shadows, his face a mask of misery and rage. Amber tried to distract him, pulling on his arm. But for the first time, he seemed annoyed by her good. The real blow came the next day. Holly needed to sever the financial ties. Scott had given her several expensive gifts over the years. Designer handbags, jewelry he claimed were investments. He loved to remind her how much they cost whenever they argued about money. Holly gathered them all up. The Louis Vuitton, the Gucci, the diamond tennis bracelet. She took high-quality photos and uploaded them to Poshmark and The RealReal. In the description for the handbag she wrote, "Authentic, barely used. Selling to fund therapy for my ex-boyfriend's boundary issues. Proceeds also go to buying premium salmon for my cat, who is a better companion than the man who bought this." The listing went viral within hours. Her friends shared it. Strangers commented, cheering her on. It was petty. Yes, but it felt incredibly empowering. She was reclaiming her space, her finances, and her dignity. Scott found out, of course. He sent her a furious email threatening legal action for defamation. Holly forwarded it to her lawyer friend with a laughing emoji. Truth was an absolute defense against defamation, and she had the receipts, literally and figuratively. But amidst the victory lap, reality hit hard. Bean got sick. It started with lethargy. He stopped eating. When Holly came home 2 days after the party, he was hiding under the bed, hot to the touch. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through her anger. Bean was her family. He had been with her through the lonely nights in her first studio apartment, purring on her chest when she felt like the city was chewing her up. She rushed him to the emergency vet. The diagnosis was grim, a severe urinary blockage. He needed surgery immediately. It was expensive. Thousands of dollars she didn't have readily liquid. She sat in the sterile waiting room, her hands shaking. She thought about calling Scott. He had always claimed to love Bean. Our son, he used to call him. Maybe he would help. It was a moment of weakness. She dialed his number, unblocking him for just a second. Hello. Scott answered on the first ring, sounding hopeful. Holly, it is Bean, she said, her voice cracking. He is sick. Scott, really sick. He needs surgery tonight. I need help with the bill, please. There was a pause. In the background, Holly heard a woman's voice. Amber's, "Who is it, babe? Is it her again?" "It is Holly," Scott said, his voice changing, becoming distant. "Listen, Holly, I can't right now. She's having a crisis. Her landlord is threatening to evict her. I have to help her move some things." Holly felt the blood drain from her face. "Scott, your cat is dying. He is in the ER." "He is your cat, Holly. You kept him," Scott said, defensive now. "Look, I am sorry about Bean, really. But Amber needs me right now. She's hysterical. I can't just leave her. Can't you put it on a credit card?" The line went dead. Holly sat there, staring at the phone. The final thread snapped, not with a bang, but with a whisper. He chose Amber again, even over the life of the innocent creature they had raised together. She wiped her face. She stood up and walked to the receptionist. "Do it," she said. "Do the surgery, I'll pay." She used the money from the Poshmark sales. The irony wasn't lost on her. Scott's vanity gifts were saving the life he couldn't be bothered to care about. Bean survived. When she brought him home a few days later, shaved and stitched up but purring, Holly made a promise. "No more," she whispered into his soft fur. No more relying on people who don't show up. It's you and me, Bean. We're going to build a life so good we won't even remember his name. But Scott wasn't done, and neither was Karma. 3 weeks passed. The silence from Scott was a welcome change, a void that Holly quickly filled with the hum of her escalating career and the tentative, electric thrill of her dynamic with Liam. She had convinced herself that Scott had finally accepted his exile. She was wrong. It started on a Tuesday afternoon. Holly was in the middle of a high-stakes strategy meeting, presenting the Q3 analytics for a major tech client. Her phone, face up on the conference table, buzzed. Then it buzzed again and again, a relentless vibration that drew the eyes of her CEO. Holly flipped it over, her stomach tightening. Mount Sinai Hospital. She stepped out into the hallway, her heels clicking sharply against the polished concrete floor. "This is Holly, Miss Miller. This is the emergency department at Mount Sinai. We haven't Scott Carter admitted here. He's somewhat incoherent, but he listed you as his emergency contact. We couldn't reach anyone else." "What happened?" Holly asked, her voice devoid of the panic that would have consumed her a month ago. "Alcohol poisoning, ma'am, and indicators of a bleeding ulcer. He's stable, but he's refusing to settle down until he sees you." Holly leaned against the cold wall of the corridor. A myriad of emotions flickered through her. Annoyance, exhaustion, a dull ache of pity, but love, concern. That well was dry. She looked through the glass walls of the conference room. Liam was there, laughing at something a colleague said, looking bright and unburdened. That was her future. Scott was an anchor trying to drag her back to the seabed. "I'll be there in an hour," Holly said, her voice steel, but only to drop off his things. "I am not his keeper." She re-entered the room, caught Liam's eye, and gave a subtle nod. He knew. He always seemed to know. 10 minutes later, as she gathered her things, Liam appeared at her cubicle. The ex, in the hospital, drank himself into a stupor, Holly said, shoving her laptop into her bag. "I need to drop off that damn cat carrier he's been nagging about via email. It's the last thing of his I have. I want it gone." "I am driving you," Liam said. It wasn't a question. "Liam, you don't have to. I know. But I am not letting you walk into that toxicity alone. Besides," he flashed a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes, "I think it's time I met the man who was foolish enough to let you go." The drive uptown was quiet. When they walked into the hospital room, the smell of antiseptic and stale misery hit Holly like a physical blow. Scott looked small in the hospital bed, his skin the color of old parchment, hooked up to a saline drip. He looked pathetic. He looked nothing like the confident, arrogant man who had stood in her hallway with Amber just weeks ago. His eyes, glassy and rimmed with red, lit up when he saw her. "Holly," he croaked, his voice raw. "You came, I knew you would." Then his gaze shifted. He saw Liam standing just behind her shoulder, holding her purse, a silent sentinel of support. The light in Scott's eyes died, replaced by a flash of confused hostility. "Who is he?" Scott rasped. "This is Liam," Holly said calmly, staying at the foot of the bed. She didn't move to hold his hand. She didn't smooth his hair. "He drove me. I heard you had a rough night." "I missed you," Scott blurted out, ignoring Liam completely. He tried to sit up, wincing as pain shot through his abdomen. "I drank because I missed you, Holly. The apartment. It's so quiet without you, without Bean." "You made your choices, Scott," Holly corrected him, her tone clinical. "Drinking yourself into an ulcer isn't a romantic gesture. It's a tantrum. It's you refusing to handle the consequences of your own actions." "It is Amber," Scott argued, his voice whining. She's suffocating, Holly. She's not like you. She's messy. She's demanding. I made a mistake, a huge mistake. Please, just tell me we can fix this. I'll cut her off, I swear. Holly looked at him. Really looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, the desperation of a narcissist who realized his supply had run out. But she felt nothing. The anger that had fueled her for weeks had evaporated, leaving behind a profound, cool indifference. We can't fix this, Scott, because nothing is broken. It's just over, she said softly. I was convenient for you. I was safe. Amber is chaos, and you invited her in. You don't get to run back to safety just because the chaos got too loud. She reached into the large tote bag Liam had carried in for her. She pulled out the plastic cat carrier and placed it on the visitor's chair with a definitive thud. Here is the carrier, and inside is the spare key you gave me. Holly, don't leave me here, Scott whispered, tears welling in his eyes. I am sick. I am alone. You aren't alone, Scott, she said, turning her back on him. You have your sister Amber call her. I am sure she'd love to play nurse. She walked out. She didn't look back. Liam fell into step beside her, his hand finding hers and squeezing tight. You okay? He asked as the automatic doors slid open, releasing them into the crisp New York evening. Yeah, Holly breathed, looking up at the sky. I think I finally am. I feel light. Good, Liam smiled, opening the car door for her. Because I know a place that does the best tacos in the city, and I think we're celebrating. Back in the hospital room, Scott stared at the empty doorway. His phone buzzed on the bedside table. It was a text from Amber. Hey babe, where have you been? I need you to Venmo me like $200 for groceries. Also, my landlord is being a jerk again. Call me. Scott closed his eyes and let the phone drop from his hand. The silence was deafening. The weeks following the hospital visit were a study in contrasts. While Holly's life bloomed into high-definition color, Scott seemed to be buffering in grayscale. Holly was promoted to senior director. She celebrated with Liam and her team at a karaoke bar in Koreatown, singing bad 80s pop songs until her voice gave out. Liam was a revelation. He wasn't just a rebound, he was a partner. He listened. He remembered that she hated cilantro. He bought premium, freeze-dried salmon treats for Bean and spent hours building a complex cardboard castle for the cat in her living room. It was easy. It was fun. It was everything her relationship with Scott hadn't been in years. But Scott wasn't ready to fade into the background. Since Holly had blocked his number, he found other ways to haunt her. It started with the accidental likes on her Instagram posts, photos from 3 years ago, deep in her archive. It was a digital nudge, a wave from the past saying, I'm still looking. Then came the emails, sent from new addresses. They bypassed her spam filters. They swung wildly between nostalgia and accusation. Subject, remember Paris. Holly, I walked past that bakery we loved today, the one with the eclairs. It made me think of how happy we were before everything got complicated. I'm seeing a therapist now. I'm working on my boundaries. Doesn't that count for something? 2 days later, subject, regarding the Poshmark listing, my mother saw what you wrote about the handbag. That was cruel. Holly, you humiliated me publicly. I thought you were classier than that. Amber thinks I should sue you, but I told her you're just hurting. Holly read them aloud to Liam over wine on her balcony. He thinks I am hurting, she laughed, shaking her head. He's rewriting history in real time. He is trying to get a reaction, Liam observed, refilling her glass. Any reaction, anger, sadness, guilt. Silence is the one thing guys like him can't handle. It makes them feel invisible. Then let's keep him invisible, Holly said, hitting delete. but Scott escalated. He started showing up first. It was at her usual coffee spot near the office. He claimed it was a coincidence, but he was wearing his best suit and holding a copy of a book Holly had recommended months ago. He tried to engage her, to force a civil conversation, but Holly simply put on her sunglasses and walked out. Then he appeared at the gym. Holly was on the treadmill, sweating through a difficult interval run, when she saw him in the reflection of the mirror. He wasn't working out. He was standing by the juice bar watching her. He looked gaunt, his clothes hanging slightly loose on his frame. When she finished her set, he intercepted her near the locker rooms. "You look great, Holly," he said, his eyes scanning her body in a way that made her skin crawl. "Relationships really suit you, or is it just the revenge body?" Holly wiped her face with a towel, not breaking stride. "It's called happiness, Scott. You should try it sometime." "I am trying," he said, matching her pace. "But it's hard when the person you love is parading around town with a child." Holly stopped dead. She turned to face him, oblivious to the other gym goers. "Liam is 24. He has a master's degree and more emotional maturity in his pinky finger than you have in your entire body. And unlike you, he knows that no is a complete sentence. So, for the last time, leave me alone." "Amber is pregnant," Scott blurted out. The words hung in the humid air of the gym, heavy and suffocating. Holly stared at him. She expected to feel a pang of jealousy, or maybe shock. Instead, she felt a wave of absolute, unadulterated, second-hand embarrassment. "Wow," Holly said flatly. "Congratulations." "It wasn't planned," Scott said quickly, panic rising in his voice. We were drinking. It was the night you came to the hospital. Afterwards, I was upset. She was there. Holly, I don't love her. I feel trapped. Her family is intense. They're already talking about weddings." He reached out, grabbing her sweaty arm. "Tell me not to do it. Tell me you still care, even a little bit, and I'll walk away from all of it. I'll pay child support. I'll deal with the fallout, but I won't marry her. Just say the word." Holly looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his desperate, selfish face. He was offering to abandon his pregnant girlfriend, the woman he blew up his life for, just to see if he still had a hold on Holly. "It was despicable, Scott," Holly said, her voice quiet and deadly. "You are truly a coward." She peeled his fingers off her arm. "Go marry her, or don't. It has nothing to do with me. But if you ever approach me again, I won't call you a coward. I'll call the police." She walked into the locker room, her heart pounding, not with love, but with the adrenaline of a bullet dodged. Scott stood alone in the hallway, the bustling sounds of the gym fading into a dull roar. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it. A notification from Instagram. Amber had tagged him in a photo. It was a picture of a sonogram caption. "God gives us what we need, even when we don't expect it. Can't wait to start this journey with my best friend. Fiscot C. Amber baby on board, Amber blissed." It had 200 likes already. His mother had commented, "Grandbaby." Scott felt the walls closing in. He looked at the locker room door where Holly had disappeared. Holly, who was strong, solvent, and sane. Holly, who was gone. He put his phone away and walked out into the gray New York afternoon, knowing he was marching toward a prison of his own design. The save the date that arrived in Holly's spam folder was a masterpiece of passive aggression. It was digital, featuring a photo of Scott and Amber on the Brooklyn Bridge. Scott looked like he was being held hostage. Amber looked triumphant, her hand resting conspicuously on their baby bump. The theme was vintage romance. Holly didn't just delete it. She forwarded it to her group chat with her girlfriends under the caption, "The funeral is scheduled for the 15th of June. New York social circles are incestuous, and even though Holly had severed ties, the gossip pipeline remained fully operational. Through mutual friends, she learned that the wedding planning was a disaster. Amber had demanded a Plaza Hotel wedding on a Queens budget. She had fired 3 florists. She had publicly shamed Scott on Facebook for not being supportive enough during her cake tasting. Scott, meanwhile, was a ghost. He had deleted his social media. He stopped going to his usual haunts. He was simply enduring. On the day of the wedding, Holly woke up to a brilliant, sunny Saturday. She stretched, feeling the high thread count sheets of her new bed, bought with her own money for her own apartment, free of memories. "Coffee?" Liam asked, walking in from the kitchen wearing nothing but pajama bottoms and a smile. He placed a mug on the nightstand and kissed her forehead. "Also, you might want to check Twitter. It's trending locally." "What is?" Amber Runaway groom. Holly sat up, grabbing her phone. It seemed the wedding drama had spilled out of private chats and onto the public internet. A guest had live tweeted the pre-ceremony chaos. 10 a.m. The bride is screaming at the makeup artist because she doesn't look ethereal enough. The groom is nowhere to be found. His groomsmen are currently searching the hotel bar. 11:30 a.m. Groom located. He was in the bathroom of a Starbucks, 3 blocks away. Apparently, he was having a panic attack. He's being marched back to the venue by his future father-in-law. Holly snorted. "He tried to run," she told Liam. "He actually tried to run. He's consistent, at least," Liam said, sitting on the edge of the bed. "He runs from problems. He ran from you when things got real, and now he's trying to run from the mess he made." "But he got caught," Holly said, scrolling through the feed. "Looks like the ceremony is starting. According to the reports, it was a train wreck." Scott arrived at the altar looking green. When Amber walked down the aisle, the music cut out halfway due to a technical glitch, leaving her to walk the rest of the way in awkward silence. But the pie feast or our assistance happened during the vows. Update: the officiant just asked the groom for the "I do." He's been silent for a solid minute. People are coughing. The bride just elbowed him. "Hard update," he said it, but it sounded like a question. "I do." Yikes. Holly put the phone down. She felt a strange sense of hollowness. It wasn't satisfaction. It was just pity. Scott had built a life based on lies and avoidance, and now he was trapped in it. He had married a woman he didn't respect to raise a child he didn't want, all because he was too weak to be honest. "You okay?" Liam asked, watching her face. "I am great," Holly said, and she meant it. "I am just really glad I am not in a Starbucks bathroom right now." "Well," Liam grinned, "I have a surprise. Get dressed. We're going to the shelter." "The shelter? Why?" "Bean needs a friend," Liam said. "And you mentioned you wanted a dog. A big, goofy dog that Scott would have hated because it sheds too much." Holly smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through her chest. "You really listen to me, don't you?" "Every word," he promised. While Scott was enduring a reception where his new wife smashed cake into his unwilling face for the cameras, Holly was adopting a 3-legged golden retriever mix named Tripod. As they walked the dog through Central Park, Holly felt the final tether to her past dissolve. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was building. But the universe, in its infinite sense of irony, had one last plot twist for Scott. 6 months later, Holly ran into Scott's mother, Mrs. Carter, at a charity auction. Mrs. Carter had always liked Holly. She had been the one to warn Holly about Amber years ago, in hushed tones over tea. Holly, Mrs. Carter exclaimed, looking older and more tired than Holly remembered. She grasped Holly's hands. You look magnificent. Thank you, Barbara. You look well, Holly lied politely. I am not, Barbara sighed, her facade crumbling. It's Scott. It's everything. Holly braced herself. How is the baby? Barbara's face did something complicated, a mix of horror and vindication. Oh, the baby is beautiful. A little boy born last week. She leaned in close, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. But Holly, there was an issue with the blood types. Holly frowned. I don't follow. Scott is AB positive. Like his father, Barbara said. Amber is a positive. Okay. The baby is O negative, Barbara whispered, her eyes wide. O negative, Holly. It's biologically impossible for Scott to be the father. Holly's jaw dropped. The math was simple, brutal, and undeniable. He demanded a DNA test right there in the hospital. Barbara continued, shaking her head. Amber screamed, cried, accused him of not trusting her. But the test came back yesterday, 0% probability. The father is some fitness trainer she met at her gym. Oh my God, Holly breathed. It was almost too much. It was a soap opera script written by a vengeful God. He left her, Barbara said. He moved back home with us yesterday. He's filing for an annulment based on fraud. He's broken, Holly. He just sits in his room and stares at the wall. He keeps saying he ruined his life for nothing. Holly looked at the older woman, seeing the pain of a mother watching her son self-destruct. I am sorry, Barbara. Truly, no one deserves that. He asks about you, Barbara said softly. He knows he messed up. He knows you were the best thing that ever happened to him. Holly gently extracted her hands from Barbara's grip. She looked across the room to where Liam was bidding on a vintage guitar, laughing with the auctioneer. He looked solid. He looked happy. He looked like her future. Tell Scott I hope he finds peace, Holly said firmly. But tell him not to look for it with me. I am not the answer to his problems anymore. I am just a lesson he had to learn. She walked away, leaving Barbara standing amidst the gala crowd. She walked straight to Liam, who wrapped an arm around her waist and pulled her close. Who was that? He asked. Just a ghost. Holly smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. But don't worry, I am not haunted anymore. 1 year later, the brownstone in Brooklyn had a garden. It was small, overgrown with ivy and wild hydrangeas. But it was Holly's. She sat on the back patio, a glass of iced tea in her hand, watching Tripod chase a squirrel with clumsy, three-legged enthusiasm. Bean, now a distinguished older gentleman of a cat, watched from the safety of a sunbeam on the porch, his tail twitching in judgment. Holly opened her laptop. She had a Zoom call in 10 minutes with her team. She was now the VP of marketing, running her own division. Life was busy, chaotic, and incredibly fulfilling. Her phone pinged with a notification. LinkedIn Scott Carter has viewed your profile. Holly didn't flinch. She clicked on the notification out of idle curiosity. Scott's profile photo had changed. He looked older, serious, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit. His job title was listed as consultant, freelance. He had left the prestigious finance firm. Rumor had it the scandal of the annulment and his public breakdown had made him a liability. She scrolled down. His About section was filled with buzzwords about resilience and new beginnings. It read like a desperate plea to the universe for a reset button. She closed the tab. She didn't feel the urge to block him. She didn't feel the urge to message him. He was just data, irrelevant background noise. Babe, have you seen my keys? Liam walked out onto the patio, buttoning his shirt. He had filled out in the last year, his boyish charm maturing into a quiet confidence. He leaned down and kissed her, a quick, practiced intimacy that felt like home. By the fruit bowl, Holly said, smiling up at him. Where are you off to? Meeting with the architect for the renovation, he said. We're going to knock down that wall in the kitchen, remember? Open concept, more light. More light, Holly repeated. I like the sound of that. Also, Liam paused, a mischievous glint in his eye. I saw a post on Facebook. Apparently, Amber is trying to become a mommy influencer. She's selling essential oils now. Holly laughed, a loud, uninhibited sound that startled the birds. Of course she is, and Scott. Last I heard, he's living in a studio in Jersey City, trying to write a novel about modern love. God help us all, Holly said. Liam squeezed her shoulder. You saved yourself, Holly. You know that, right? You saw the train coming and you got off the tracks. I did, Holly nodded. She looked at her garden, her pets, her partner. She thought about the woman she was 2 years ago. Anxious, shrinking, begging for crumbs of affection from a man who wanted the whole cake for himself. She felt a wave of gratitude for that past version of herself. The Holly who poured the ice water. The Holly who sold the handbags. The Holly who walked out of the hospital room and never looked back. I didn't just get off the tracks, Holly said, taking Liam's hand. I built a whole new station. She closed her laptop. The meeting could wait a few minutes. She wanted to sit in the sun a little longer. The air was warm. The city hummed in the distance, full of infinite possibilities. Holly took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the sweet scent of blooming jasmine and freedom. Scott was a story she used to tell, a cautionary tale, a scar that had faded to white. But this life, this was the masterpiece. And the best part, she had written every single line herself. Ladies, remember this. If a man always makes you feel like you are competing with another woman, just drop out of the race. Leave that so-called prize to that woman. When you look back from a distance, you'll realize that it wasn't a prize at all, but a package that could explode at any moment. And you'll be unharmed. This is Madam Reed. See you next time.